Hello, welcome to this quarter's episode of the Young Adult at Heart book discussion. I am your sort of host. I put out the invitation, so I'm the host. Jennifer. I am the head of a children's department in Connecticut. And then we can go around and introduce ourselves. Everyone is under the weather and in various states of disarray as far as I can tell, so this is...
I'm Abby. I have no camera today because I have Quasimodo eczema face. But I am a children and teen librarian in Connecticut, and this was my pick, which I feel like I'm going to be not owning up to, but whatever. Okay.
I'm Crystal, and this is Valley. Valley always makes an appearance whenever we do this because I feel like she just wants to say hi to the girls. Okay, bye, Valley. I am a 10th grade social studies teacher in Connecticut. Yeah, that's me.
I'm Kim, and no one can really agree on what I am. But whatever it is, it's at a library in Connecticut, and we'll never actually get the real answer. Yay, I have no dog. Bye.
Kim, clearly the answer is that you are a mermaid.
All right, I'm in charge of showing the book. And so we read Murder, Magic, and What We Wore. It's by Kelly Jones. I'm decided there are two relevant little blurbs. I'm reading the one that's shorter. So on the back it says, I pulled the thread through the bodice, distilling all of my longing into a single stitch. The muslin whispered, then sighed like silk, then was silk, rustling as the fibers changed in some unknowable, magical way. This gown would reinvent my life. With this gown, I'd begin to find the truth behind Mr. Harrington's lies. Somehow, even England's spies would learn about the young lady who wore this gown. Dun, dun, dun.
Excellent. Very nice. So Abby, this was your pick. We are very delayed. Our schedule is now all kerfluffed. Eventually, maybe we'll get back to doing this more regularly. Hopefully. We'd be remiss if we did not do a shout out to our beloved missing teammate, Mylene. We miss her. We love her. We hope to see her one day again. We hope to drag her kicking, maybe not screaming, to the East Coast to join us at some point. So do we have general thoughts about this? So we have a did not finish, I believe. I'm gonna put you on blast, Crystal. Sorry. So is there a reason you didn't finish it? Did you just run out of
blast? I didn't finish it either. I stopped when I had pages to go.
Oh, good. Good job, guys.
Wait, Kim, how many pages?
I think I stopped. My goal was to make it so I had like 100 pages left. And then, okay, so I stopped on page 200 and I don't know, like 7. And then I was like, I'm done now. And I stopped reading.
It really picks up at the end.
Well, and I think that was my qualm, is that I wanted more murder and magic and less of What We Wore. And so I needed a little, and I could feel where it was starting to pick up. Because I made it to like page 230 maybe. So I was like 50 pages shy of finishing. And I thought we were meeting at 1. And so I was like, okay, I guess this is as far as I'm getting. And then when we weren't meeting at 1 and we were meeting at 2, I'm like, oh, I could finish it. But I was feeling really like I did not want to pick it up. I was like, or we could just talk about the parts that I've read already. I just feel like it was it was too much of a slow burn for me at the beginning, and I don't care enough about the characters. And I wanted to, because I think the premise of it is really cool, and I can recognize where like there are levels of badassery to her character, but I wasn't rooting for her, which feels weird to like a character that should otherwise be compelling, that I was just like, okay, like if she does the thing, she does the thing. If she doesn't, that's fine too. Like, so I just didn't have that vested interest in seeing her like figure out this spy plot and fog and all this stuff. I'm like, it's fine. So I guess that's kind of where I landed on it.
I had a bit. I don't know if anybody else is the same flavor of reader as I am, so it's probably an issue that only I had with it. So this was like a Regency era story. It's set in Regency era London and outskirts, and there's a lot about clothing because she ends up working as a seamstress. In the notes below, this is not a spoiler-free zone, so spoils will happen. And for both of you that didn't finish the book, I'm going to talk about the ending, so I feel like you're not going to be mad about it. I had like a little bit of disconnect because the only other books that I regularly consume that are in this setting are trashy romance novels. And so I was like, where's the sex? Where's the romance? Like, what's happening? Like, there should be a romance plot line coming up sometime. Like, my brain kept like waiting for that and it never materialized.
Her tiny 5-second almost engagement?
Yeah. But I was just like, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you there's a section all the way at the end which you may not have. I don't think it happened. I think it's a note that's all the way at the end, like an acknowledgement that's all the way at the end. She borrowed characters from other people's series that are set in this time and historic figures. And so I think that was, so I had read some of those but not all of them, and I was familiar enough with the world that it felt like I was reading fan fiction. Like I was like, but wait, why does that person sound familiar? Like what's going on here? I was like, and there's still no porny bits? Are we sure about that? Like, I'm waiting and it's just not happening. Which is fine. Like, I don't need romance in my fiction, or my nonfiction, but it was strange to have this because it's such like a Regency era romance is such like a mainstay of that genre. So it was very strange to me. Even though the other ones that I had read that she makes call-outs to is another teen fiction that doesn't have like explicit sex in it. So I don't know what my brain was doing, frankly. So that's my awkward aside about this.
So I read the book back in like October, November, so my memory's a little like foggy on it. I did like it a lot. It was very slow to start and in the middle. But I liked how it picked up at the end, and it did seem like it's setting up for a potential series, so it seemed like I might read another one, or if they had an audiobook with a good narrator, listen to another one. But what I really liked the premise, and I did like the characters. The thing that I wanted was just like a little bit more information on how magic works in this world. And I think that's really interesting, Jen. I didn't see that note. So maybe if it's relying on like another universe, like I don't have the knowledge of that, or was the other universe not a magic one?
It's another series of universes. Like she grabs people from historic I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find the it's in an ebook and mine expired like right before I finished it yesterday. So right under the wire. But they it's a Patricia C. Reed series, and she did the Dealing with Dragons books, the Enchanted Forest Chronicles, but she wrote like a Regency era, like tween book, and it's like Cecilia. It's something having to do with like, again, this kind of like tweens doing magic in Regency era London, and I was like, there were like little pieces of a bunch of different worlds that are set in this bigger historic fiction that she like nodded to or grabbed from, and I was just like, it was very disjointed for me. But it, like, I wish that note had been in the beginning because I would have been more prepared for it. I don't know.
Yeah, so my biggest thing was just that I liked how the magic worked in her particular profession. But you didn't really learn how too many other people use magic, if there are any other sorts of professions that are touched with magic at all.
Well, they like talked about it really briefly, that like the War Machine grabbed people who had like metal affiliated magic and yanked them into like the front, and into like, they pulled them into France to fight Napoleon. And so like she alluded to it a little bit, but it also, and like they talk about how other spies were using this kinds of magic, because like she can sew glamour, so she can like change your entire appearance, or she can change the fabric, and so she ends up working as a seamstress. But it didn't talk about like that. Didn't have it's always weird to me when like a big difference in how humans interact with the world doesn't impact the history. Like, did Napoleon not have any magic powers? Was that why he was so angry in this, or tiny? Do you know what I mean? Not angry, but like why he did what he did in like, it didn't impact any of the broader historic storylines, which like whenever, and it didn't talk about like when this magic started. Like it felt like underdeveloped from a fantasy standpoint. And again, it felt like it could be like a lead up into like other like sequels, but I don't know if I would read them either, because it wasn't the world building in this one needed to be denser for me, which I feel like would have dragged the plot even further for Crystal and for Kim. So they
well, yeah, if you're already slow, it's like, well, maybe you don't want to add it, but it did seem like it was lacking a little bit of something.
Oh, I guess it's my turn. So when I started reading it, they have these, like, the titles of the chapters are really witty and funny. Like, a message is discovered and extremely horrible garments arrive. I was like, oh, that's so funny. That's so cute. And so, and the book itself read kind of funny and witty, and kind of like you, Jen, like when I read books that are historical fiction in like in a specific kind of way, like sort of like the way this was historical fiction. There might be romance, there might be dragons, there might be politics, there might be something that kind of like drives the story, and either you like it or you don't. And then when you have books that have an element of magic in them, like they might not necessarily have to have this big explanative like part where they explain how the magic of the world works. Like, they can just kind of drop it and go, but like the story itself kind of helps you understand what's happening. Like the Kim Harrison books, there's like vampires and witches and fairies, and like everybody knows they're there, and something happened with tomatoes once, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. But there was this big thing with tomatoes, and no one eats ketchup anymore. But sorry. Right. And so go ahead and laugh. And like, they kind of drop that bomb, and you're like, what? Sort of the way they drop this bomb of like, she's sewing, and the maid's like, you just changed the fabric of this dress. And the character's like, oh, okay. So, so this sort of dropped this bomb. So I'm reading, and I'm waiting for the rest of it. I'm waiting. Why, how? Everyone seems to know that there is magic, but like nobody's talking about it. And, is it okay to have it? Is it not okay to have it? Does it raise your standing? Does it lower your standing? I don't know. And like, being a seamstress is bad, but is being a glamour artist bad? Like, that seems good. And then on top of that, there were all of these weird things that you learn to do in society that just happened to make her a maybe not shitty spy. Like, you know, like I think they were at a ball and she was able to take in the entire room without turning her head to look at it. And I was like, oh, is that a thing that you learn to do? Like, was that real? Like, was that a real thing they taught women, or
there was
yeah.
If you finish, specifically speaking to that point, if you finish the book, like, her aunt is a spy master, and so she's been training her to be a spy master this whole time, which, like, for someone who consumes a lot of Regency era, I was like, you do not learn how to beat people up. Yes, observing, but like the action adventure-y stuff and like having a sewing kit like in your like some of it, I was just like, oh, her aunt's a spy master, because like
I thought that
I picked that up too. I think when she pulled a knife out and like was like, let's learn knife throwing, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. And she had like some secret pocket in her box that she carried around. I was like, oh, okay. But like that, like it just, maybe it wasn't subtle, but I don't know. But I kind of picked up that this aunt clearly knows. When she pulled out the knife, I was like, oh, okay. Like, you don't just learn knife throwing at your debutante ball. But just, I don't know, the way of it all, I was like, nah. And so that's why I stopped at 80 pages to the end.
Because I never see anything coming, was surprised by that, because I'm like just dense. But then also I really liked kind of the social, like how there were kind of like social elements that they used to their advantage. I thought that was kind of cute. But then also this kind of reminded me of another book that I read last year called, I think it's called A Spy in the House. It's from the Agency series. And it's another series. I think it's either Regency or it might be Victorian, but the girl is like plucked out of her life and trained by an agency to be a spy, because like in that time period, like women could kind of go unnoticed in situations. And I thought that the spy stuff in that book was like kind of what I wanted from this book, but then magic. And it wasn't quite, I actually really liked, I also liked like the very long drawn out descriptions of all the clothes and stuff, but I wanted a little bit more, I guess I just wanted a little bit different spy stuff along with it.
I think I wish she had been, so like there's this like, you know, quirky, confused female trope that you see, I think, more in contemporary books than anything else, kind of like a la Twilight, like cute girl trips every time she takes 6 steps and is like really quirky and bananas. And this character was kind of like that, but it was like a little too much. Like, she was like, I'm going to go to the War Office and tell them these things and make them listen. And we have no money, but I'm going to sew the dresses and I'm going to get us money. But I haven't sewn the dresses, but the money's like it was just like, I was like, girlfriend, like you have more sense than this. Like, I'm sure you do. And like, I typically like, you know, bananas people who kind of make these dumb decisions. Then they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Kind of, when I was reading this, so remember Jen, I don't know if you guys know, me and Jen went to see the My Little Pony movie and it was lovely. And so like at one point, like Rainbow Dash like does like the big thing, and then like the bad guys see them and she's like, oh, you think they saw my Sonic Rain Boom? And everyone's like, fuck yes, they saw your Sonic Rain Boom. And so like, it's funny, but like to an extent, like I like that. I was like, ha, that's funny, you're so stupid. But for some reason, while I was reading this particular character, it just drove me crazy. I was, every time I turned around, I was like, I can't deal with you. Like, your Sonic Rain Boom is not nearly as interesting as Rainbow Dash, which is like a really convoluted way to describe it. But like, there was just something about, and I don't know if it was like the way the character was set up, or if it had, I really don't know. But, you know, normally when there's a character running around making a bunch of stupid decisions, I'm entertained. But in this book, we had this character running around making a lot of stupid decisions, and I was just irritated, and just wanted her to get her life. I'm like there. I don't know. I really don't know. And so I think that's why, as soon as the excitement started, like, it's that point in the book where you're like, it's about to go down now was the exact point in the book where I was like, too bad I don't care anymore. And I put the book down and picked up another one and read like 127 pages. So like while sitting down, because I just like, I still wanted to read, but like her story, like I no longer cared. Like it was all gonna work out. You're on to Spy because she taught you how to throw knives. Something's probably up with your seamstress too, because she's really good at a lot of stuff. She can remove glamours or something. I don't know if they got into that later,
really?
but yeah. Well, you know what? I would have rather heard her story. Every time Millie told a little bit more about her story, I was like, "Where's your book? I want to read that." It just everything felt chunked. I don't know.
Was Millie evil, or is Millie good?
No, she's not. Millie was like Millie was kind of like she was her own little deus ex machina. Like she was just like she was very convenient, and she never stopped. Like there was no turn in her character.
I kept waiting for her to be evil.
Yes,
I was like, this whole book is about spies and about people that are going to go unnoticed, and like this girl just like shows up and has all of these skills and does all of these things. I was like,
that's why
I'm like, I don't know.
That's what I think it almost seemed like when you get to the end and you're like, oh, it is kind of set up for there to be sequels. It's almost like you should have started with the second book and then like told this story in flashbacks, because there's not enough there to sustain the whole plot. But I am interested in their dynamic, and I do think they kind of like set it up for them to have like a friendly rivalry as spies, because Millie's naturally so much better at a lot of stuff than the main character, whose name I can't pronounce is. That was another thing. I just a name. And so yeah, so it just seems like if there is a follow-up to it, that friendship, that might be worth reading for me, because I did like Millie and I did like their interactions, and if they're learning from the aunt more, like that might be more fun. But then then that kind of could have kicked the series off for me.
Can I ask another dumb question? And I tried to start this a couple of times before I was able to really dig into it. So it could have just been that I missed it in the beginning. How old is Anise, the A name? Do we know how old she is?
I don't remember offhand. I feel like she...
Well, how about how old did she read to you? I guess is maybe then the question.
She read as like a sheltered 16. I think, like where she was all like,
yeah, me too.
My favorite part of the book was honestly when she was like, okay, I have a solution. And then the guy was like, I'm proposing to you. And she was like, wait, what? No, that is not. Are you a spy? Like, I'm suspicious. And wait, you're proposing? Like, what's happening? Like, I loved that part. I loved because like, I loved her being blindsided, because we were just like, duh, like this is clearly what's happening. And then I loved her being like, I'm suspicious, but less suspicious. Like you're cute, I guess. Like I don't, but like this is not. And then my other favorite thing was that she like was like where she like applied, like she sent a note to the guy who like she helped advise on his waistcoat, and then like he wasn't there because he was away for the weekend, and she was like, well, marriage is clearly not happening, and like moved on to the next thing.
That was hysterical. And also when she got the note back from her like friend. I don't know. I thought some of her like 16-year-old drama was really charming.
There were times where she read, I ultimately landed her at about 16, maybe 17. But there were times where she read as like 12. And I don't know if it is because the character is sheltered. I don't know if it's because I'm also still listening to the Flavia de Luce books on audiobooks. So I'm like, I have her in the back of my brain as like a plucky, like 11 or 12-year-old or however old she is in the one that I'm listening to. So I don't know if that is influencing kind of how I read this character. But
you read as younger to me because there was no romance. Like that's where she was like not interested in. That's why she was reading way younger to me. I agree with you. Where every so often I'd be like, oh, like this is a baby, like she's 12. Like she definitely.
And so what is the it is a YA. I'm looking at the spine of my book as YA. So what would be librarian folks like what age group would you recommend this to? Because I think sorry, go ahead.
A little too slow moving for me to want to put it in the tween section, but I'd definitely be recommending it to like 7th to 9th grade, probably.
Because I was gonna say, I think my 10th graders would be bored. I can't think because I can't think of a kid, even like my really avid readers. I feel like I can't think of a kid that would love this, but I think maybe like a nerdy 7th, 8th grader that could like dig into, the history parts of it and probably get over some of the stuff that annoyed me about it. You know what I mean? As an adult, because it's not for me.
I don't know if it's us reading it as adults though, because I think again, like I am completely with Kim. I wanted the maid character, like I wanted her story. I wanted to know about her. I wanted to know about her sister. I wanted to know about her time with her actor family and their tragic death. Like I wanted to know all about that. Like I would very happily read a sequel that is not I feel like the problem with this character is that she's not a main character, she's a secondary character. She wasn't super well developed. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, like 110%. Like, I think I think it was the development of the character, and I think it was the development of the world. Like, I feel like the author could have like woken up one day and is like, I'm gonna write a book, and then like finish this in 2 days, and was like, it's done, and sent it off to the printers. Is kind of how I feel about it. Like, we have this magic element that wasn't developed at all. Like, not even in the most basic or blasé of ways. We have this character who let's just even skip her entirely. And you have these historical aspects that just don't make any sense if that's not something that you already know. Like, it's almost like you had to read this book with a certain like list of like a certain type of knowledge to understand what was happening. And if you didn't have that, then you weren't going to get it, kind of like fan fiction. And like, good luck.
Kim, that's exactly the point that I was going to make, is that looking at, so Jen, what you pointed out in the notes at the end, looking at that list, it's an extensive list. Like, it's not 1 or 2 worlds she's borrowing from. It's a lot of books and then a whole slew of characters. And some are very recognizable. Like, she talks about Cinderella. You know what I mean? She talks, people have a reasonable knowledge of like Napoleon, like it's a historical figure, right? So she borrows from some things that I think are pretty readily accessible, but exactly your point, Kim, exactly what you were saying. It's like, as someone that doesn't read a lot of this particular world, of this particular era, and even as a history person, obviously it relies on much more than just like having a rudimentary understanding of the history of this time period, which is honestly all mine is, because it's not what I teach and it's not my favorite. But yeah, I felt like there was, again, I think that's part of the reason that I wasn't really connected to these people or this time. I also felt like them losing her father, and like how I was picturing the house that they were in. I feel like all of that crumbled out from underneath them very quickly, but then also not very quickly. It's like they had a lot of money and then had no money and only had like a pair of earrings and a necklace to sell. And then that was it. So I was very confused.
There was some major Gilmore Girls economics happening in this book.
They also, again, that's one of those, like the last 100 pages of the book, it's revealed that her aunt is a spy master, and basically, which I was like, oh, this is kind of shitty. Her aunt is like, no, I was setting it up so you would have to go be a lady's companion so I could go do spy things in Europe. Like, I need to go to France now, and I needed to get you off the table because your dad is dead, and I needed to go investigate that. So, like, she didn't put the dad dying into place, but she was like, oh no, it's my time to be Lady Spy Extraordinaire on an adventure, and I don't want to bring you with me. And so like the fact that her aunt was like all of a sudden so intentionally helpless and they had to do all of this stuff was all like a facade, which I was like, which really was because of her having to give up her mom's jewelry was very cruel feeling, and also because of the fact that they couldn't pay the servant, like her, like it was like it was this like callous disregard, which made me have no investment in the aunt character after it was revealed. I was like, oh, that was like really shitty. Like that was just like being a crap family member. Like to, because she was just really like, that's why she was pushing so hard and being like, no, we can't do, you won't make it as a seamstress, because she basically was like at the end she's like, oh no, my investments are doing fine, we're cool. Like I was like, that's messed up, man. Like, yeah, you had to get rid of like the ugly jewelry, which is great, like that didn't seem like a hardship, but like it got pretty dire there, or dire feeling there at the end, and she's like exhausted and sewing all of this stuff, like trying to like get her like this like tween like daffy but vulnerable character is like is exhausted because she is sewing this clothing for other people, trying, because you are being like willfully helpless. I was just like really mad at the adult in this. I was like, you're terrible.
I liked the other adult, the like bakery lady, and I also wanted to know more about her.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
Me too. So I'm mad now that like that's how that ended. You know what? That's so fucking rude. Like I said it, but like my thing was off. Like that is rude. But on top of that, I mean, taking it back to like a writing perspective, again, it feels like, so, you know, what's her name? Kelly Jones, and like, not to like shit all over her, but was like, oh, I wrote this book in 2 days. Can we publish it? And they were like, oh no, because there's still all these plot holes. And she's like, okay, give me an hour. And then like she typed, you know, all of that. And was like, is it ready now? And they were like, yeah. You know, or like those books, or I don't even know if there are books that do it. It's more, again, we're just going to take this on back to fan fiction, which I love, so I am not shitting on. It's like where you read and you read and you read and you read, and then you get to the end and they wake up and it was a dream. Like, that's how I feel having that knowledge now. Like, she did all of, like, despite how wonky, I don't even know the right word for this character. I really don't even know what to say about her. But despite how bananagrams she was ultimately trying to help. Like, I know, it's like my word when kids piss me off, bananagrams. She, you know, her dad was dead. She was trying to figure out who killed him. She was trying to go to the people who she thought were the appropriate parties to deal with it. And on top of that, she was trying to like start this business. She was trying to raise some money. She was trying to take care of Millie because like mean nephew was trying to get her. I hope someone wrapped that plot point up. Good. You know, she was trying to do a lot, only to, you know, in a sense, wake up and find out that they're fine. And her aunt was trying to send her to be a lady's maid, which would ruin her reputation, which I still don't understand. Well, and I guess that I understand. And that's kind of crappy. That, I don't know, that makes me cranky.
They did. She ends up getting assaulted by him. Like, she's like at one of the balls, dressed in one of her glamours as a lady's maid. Like, again, last like 100 pages of the book, she's like walking along looking for stuff. She hears a maid being assaulted in the closet, like by the jerk raper guy, and like busts in, is like, absolutely not, and then the maid escapes, and then she gets yanked in because she looks like just like a maid, and he's like, yep, no one's gonna believe you. And so she escapes because I feel like she stabs him with one of her needles. Like, she does a good job, but then she goes into the ballroom and is like, he assaulted me, and they're like, no one's gonna believe a maid, and she's like, but they'll believe me, and reveals that she's like a lady. And so he gets like carted away and people believe her, which is like very realistic for like power structures. Like, that's definitely a thing. You're less likely to be believed. And I kind of appreciated that happened, but it was also like one of those, like, it felt like not an afterthought, but the
Like she typed it in that last hour. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
That's literally all I had to say about that. I don't know.
It's just, yeah, it was one of those, like I feel like maybe she was writing a whole series and then found out that she wasn't going to get to write a whole series, and then like jammed some of the other stuff from the other books into this book at the last minute. Because I loved the costume things, and I loved that her magic worked like that. But I agree, there was no structure for like how magic impacts your social status. And like what humans do is like something's different about you, and it's either amazing or we're judging you and it makes you dirty. Like there's no, and like they didn't have anything set up for how humans are making judgments on other humans that have this special power. So.
I don't know if this makes me a child, but I also would have liked some pictures. I'm like, but really. So as she's talking about all these different, very specific, like bodice and sleeves and this, like to have a sketch or something, even if it's at the start of the chapter or somewhere throughout to kind of give you a little bit more of a visual of what these things look like. I don't think is out of the realm of possibility in a YA novel. And I would have liked a little something, because there was also a lot of terminology that I felt like was very specific, very wardrobe specific. And not that I dislike that, but I also wasn't at a point where I really wanted to look up what all of these things were. That's absolutely what I would have told my students to do, but I didn't really feel like it. Looking up what all of these things were to see what they looked like or what it was in the context. I was just like, yeah, it's a clothing thing, and moved on. So I would have liked some kind of visual.
The best thing about ebooks in the entire world is when you have an ebook that is smart enough to have a dictionary attached to it where you can just highlight the word and look it up. It is the best thing that we have done with technology, because you would have done it. You would have been like, what is that fabric? And you'd be like, it's like a light cotton fabric. Cool. Or like damask, and you'd be like, it's a heavily embroidered fabric. You'd be like, great, now I like can feel the texture of what this
or like
bit was.
What is that box thing that she's carrying around that Kim, I think literally that's how you referred to it earlier, that box thing and I was like, is that what it was? Like
it killed me. I was
her case, like
handle on it. It had a name. You keep talking. I'm gonna find a name. No, it had a name, and the yacht had a pocket in it. So I was like, oh, it's a wooden box with fabric inside of it and a handle on the top. I don't know.
I think it's just like a purse, like a pre.
But what kind of purse? But what? True. Is it a big purse? Is it a little purse? Like, is it like this big, or is it like this big?
A picture of being like
Mary Poppins shit.
Mary Poppins
stuff keep coming out of it.
or I'm thinking it might be one of those like where it's just a bag with like a strap on it, like where you're just like, that lady's Carrie.
Band box.
Different.
It's a band box. That's what it's called. I'm off to Google. Carry on.
Isn't that? It's just like basically a hat box. It's like a big wooden or like a.
I was picturing like a hat box kind of. Like
we're all wrong. It's gonna be like a box shaped like a brass band. Like it's gonna be nothing that we think it is. But yeah, no, it definitely, that's one of those things that like as a Regency romance reader, I was like, yes, the band box. Like it's like in my vocabulary. Don't know what it is. Someone's probably had sex on it at some point. Like I have no idea. Like I liked the descriptions of the costumes, but yeah, like I feel like she would have been. Oh wait, what? Kim, you have to talk. Take yourself off of mute. Take yourself off of mute.
I'm sorry. I typed band box and hit image, and that was the first thing I saw.
Perfect.
Sorry, no, there's a definition. A cardboard box, typically circular, for carrying hats. So she's walking around with this big giant circular box the size of a big hat and not a bonnet, ? who is that? Who walks around with that? It's okay. Now we know. Sorry.
When you were talking about the dresses again, Jen, the other thing that I really liked, the other kind of specific detail, was that she could kind of look at people and be like, "Oh, honey, no, like that's not your color." Like those little details, I thought were great. Like she would sit there and kind of like puzzle it out, like, "Oh, she doesn't look good at that. What would she look good in?" And I thought those were all very charming when she was kind of like, "We'll get you out of that celery, honey. Don't worry."
I like that too.
I wanted them to be friends. Like that relationship should have happened. Like they should have been best friends at the end, and there should have been shenanigans. And there was no like power of making, like there was just her and her servant, which is an uneven power dynamic, and I'm not as into it. Like because you don't know what the maid is thinking. She could just be like, "Well, crap, no one else is gonna hire me." Sorry, Crystal, go ahead.
Oh, no. Sorry, I forgot I was not on mute and you were just watching me like adjust my scarf. Sorry, y'all. No, because I was thinking, Abby, to your point, those are the points where I found her really charming. And like I really wanted to root for her. And I liked all of that sassy stuff. And I appreciated that this wasn't a YA novel that was driven by like she was trying to get the guy, you know what I mean? Like I was really appreciative of that because I actually had students that were talking to me about not liking the YA genre. And one, I think it's because they read since they're reading a lot of classics and like more adult books in English, I think that that's typically what they're used to. And so I don't know that they would necessarily be like, "Oh, I'm going to go pick this up." It might to them feel very juvenile. And I'm not saying I am an adult that enjoys reading YA. So like, I'm not saying that that's true. So I was like, well, why not? I said, because I like reading YA. I said, and I read adult books too. I said, so what is it about YA that you don't like? And they were like, I just feel like it's all like, here's this girl and she's quirky. And then there's this boy and she like, he doesn't realize that she likes him and like all this stuff. And I said, well, that's not every YA book. And I paused and I was like, well, it's a lot of YA books.
Well, yeah.
Have some kind of that plot line in it. And so when I first started reading this, I was just really appreciative actually that there wasn't that. Cause I was like, ooh, maybe this is the book that I hand to this student. And I'm like, hey, no, this is like just like a badass lady. But she was less badass and a little bit more bumbly, which again is true of being 16. But I think again, I wanted a little bit more murder and magic. I think that's going to be my overall review of the book. I wanted more murder and magic.
Yep, agreed. That was a beautiful summary. Like she was a bumbling ditz, and I got very impatient with her. That was kind of, and that's not a judgment. I am also a bumbling ditz, so like, it's fine. Like, but I don't know if I'd want to read a whole book about me. So like, yeah, agreed. That's a beautiful summary, Crystal. That was nice.
That is a beautiful summary, Crystal. But you know what, Jen? I'm going to say I would want to read a book about your bumbly bits. Like, I think just all very bumbly people.
Can I cut you off? It sounded like you wanted to read a book about my bumbly bits.
No! Well, maybe. No! Who watches these? Anyone? No one. I could read a book about you or your bumbly bits, Jen. And Crystal's too. I'm going to hope Abby's laughing just as hard as you guys are. So I can read a book about all your bumbly bits.
I am.
Good. But to get to my point, friends, I think the point is we all have a balance that I'm going to call her Anise because I feel like it, because Anise sounds dumb. Have the balance that we have. And I think even at 16, like I know what 16-year-old Kim was like. 16-year-old Kim still kind of wanted to play with Barbies in a corner. So like, but there's absolutely no balance. Like she was all of the bumbly bits without one iota of a brain cell. Even a 16-year-old, like not fully formed. Like it just like there was nothing. There's this movie. I think it's like an ABC Family movie with like Kaylee Cuoco in it or something, where she's like a designer and she's designing clothes and apparently also like the daughter of a mob boss. Weird. But she spent a lot of the book talking about like fashion and about like looking at people and being like, no. Like if you would just change the color and do this, it'll look great. Which is what Anise, as I'm going to call her, those were the parts of the book that were super cool. Like as someone who is interested in wardrobe and interested in costuming, you know, I was like, this is kind of cool, even though I also do wish there were pictures, Crystal, because I could not picture all of this. Like I just my own things, like hope that's what it looks like. But she didn't have the balance that even those in those quirky girl, bad boy, guy books, like there's balance in those to an extent, unless they're really crappy. And this one didn't seem to have any, which was why I too got tired of her and was like, girlfriend, like, please, like I beg of you. But she just never quite figured it out, and it was just a lot. It was a lot. I also wanted more Murder and Magic. So what would we give this book? There was a fuzzy. On a scale of 1 to 5, there's lots of fuzzies. I'd give it a 2.5.
It cut you off. Was that a 2?
I said it like a 2.5, like a 2.5.
I always rate it really high after I read. Like if I put it on Goodreads right after I read it, I probably rate everything about a star higher than when I think back on it. So I gave it 4 stars right after I finished, but I would probably give it 3.
Agreed. I probably would give it like 2.5, 3 stars. I think that there could be sequel books that I would like a lot more, but there could be sequel books that I would hate. So it could kind of go in either direction. But I don't know that she did set it up for actually writing sequels, and we're not talking about the sequels, imaginary or real. We're talking about this book. So yeah, 2.5, 3 stars, I'd say.
Does anybody know, I'm actually just looking it up right now, any of her other stuff? Any of Kelly Jones's other stuff? Or has ever, because I was curious where this fell in her body of work. You know what I mean?
I've read the first couple of chapters of this Unusual Chickens for the Exceptional Poultry Farmer, which is like a very easy juvenile fiction book, probably for like 3rd grade. And the first couple chapters were cute. And
there are illustrations. Maybe she just needed a buddy to do illustrations for her.
It looks to are those? I'm looking her up. Are those her only 2 books? ? I believe. Unusual Chickens for Exceptional Poultry Farmers. The title of that is brilliant. BT Dubs. And the one we read? ?
Yeah, I think that is it, but I think maybe it was like a code shifting thing, because I feel like if it was for like a younger juvenile fiction group and there were illustrations, I feel like maybe, and with the different, do you know what I mean, like the historical fantasy fiction is difficult. I feel like it's a difficult like genre to write, and then a difficult subgenre to write just because of the world building elements. And mystery. I feel like adding a mystery thing onto that is like a lot. I feel like there was just like a great deal in this book, just like all jammed in like a big sandwich. And so
I did love when you said the mystery. It reminded me of the handkerchief code thing. Not the handkerchief code. But
yes, where the embroidery.
And I was like, I want to use that in an escape room program.
Ooh.
I loved, that it was like the color spectrum and that it was the embroidery where it was layered on each other. There were parts of this that were like beautiful and really, really brilliant. But maybe, I think maybe it was also too long. Maybe it felt like it needed to be like pulled out. And so it would have worked if it had just been like I don't know. Like I feel like the thing is that I really wanted to like this book and I just didn't like it as much. But I like enjoyed reading it even though and I finished it. So I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about this book, I guess.
I don't think I would have even, if we weren't talking about it, I probably wouldn't have made it as far into this book as I did. And I also, again, I like the premise of it. I like the idea behind it. I even like knowing the plot twist at the end. I think that could have been, if that had been handled a little differently, that I even like that. You know what I mean? But I don't know. There was something just kind of lacking in bringing it all together.
Isn't there is it Gail Carringer who does that like Etiquette and Espionage series? I feel like that I haven't read those, but they keep getting recommended to me. But I feel like
those are like similar, but they're like steampunky.
Oh, yeah, because there's like a fantasy, there's like but this was almost this wasn't steampunky because there wasn't like a tech element to it, but there are metal workers that are in the front lines that I didn't know anything about. So I feel like this was like a domestic version of like a steampunk thing, or like because magic. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily always technology. Sometimes it's magic inside of it. Because Etiquette and Espionage also has magic. Maybe, I don't know. Kim, have you read those?
Okay, I'm looking it up now. I started Etiquette and Espionage, but I didn't finish it. But I did not finish it because I didn't like it. As a matter of fact, I really liked it. But there was something, I think school, like I think just like I got so far behind in school that I had to set aside reading for a while. But what I remember from that book, and even in the beginning, like the character was more developed. Like she was sent to, so like the character was like bad, for lack of a better term. She was like a handful. She was like a freaking nuisance, and she just drove everyone around her crazy. And her mother sent her away to like a reform school to help make her into a lady, but it turned out to be like spy school, where and that's kind of how that happened. I actually don't, it might have been steampunky. Like maybe I didn't read enough to see it, but from what I read, like it seemed like it was just like this, like, but instead of, with this character who was like a proper young lady who was just like a little snarky, which kind of enhanced her character. The character in Etiquette and Espionage was like a fucking nightmare. Like she just like could not be contained and would not be contained. And so they, sent her to reform spy school. And then it just kind of went from there. So I don't remember it being steampunky, but like maybe it was later.
Well, and that book series is written by an author who's written like not like romance, adult Regency era, like fantasy Regency era fiction, because the Parasol Protectorate series, I read the first one. It's a romance novel, but it's like there's like a werewolf and like power over the dead and stuff, like in the way that you have those, but it's set in Regency era London, right? And I really, so Kim, you and I need to do a spin-off.
And I have a Tyranny of Petticoats downstairs, which is 15. It's like short stories written by YA authors about like badass girls in various situations, that has been sitting on my shelf downstairs that I haven't read yet. But like, I wonder how that would, or if this had been short stories, if that, you know what I mean? Or something. I don't know.
That also looks good. I want to read both of these more now. So thank you for increasing my reading list. Because I do like I like this breakout subgenre. But yeah. Is it Crystal? Are you the next person? The next pick? Did you pick a person? Or Kim? Did you pick
Crystal nominated me, and I actually have 2 copies of the book that are 3 steps away. So hold on one second.
Intrigue.
Yeah, I like relying on you guys to pick stuff out because I usually don't know what's out and what's good. So
this book, I haven't read it, but I read another book by this author that I really enjoyed. So I got an advanced reader's copy of his newest book when I was at my last library, because for whatever reasons, publishers just send them advanced copies of books, boxes upon boxes of them. And I would like someone to explain to me why. And then he had a contest on his Twitter, and I won. So I have a hardcover and an advanced reader copy of the same book. So if anyone would like me to get them a copy of this, if they're having a hard time getting it, I do have 2. So to completely change our genre, this is the book. It's called Overturned. It's by Lamar Giles, and I think it has to do with Vegas and gambling, and because he also sent me a pack of playing cards with it, which I thought was fucking hilarious. And there's like all the thingies. So do you guys want me to read it, the inside, or do you just want to look it up yourselves? Yes? Okay, I see a head nod. Okay. Nikki Tate is infamous even by Las Vegas standards. Her dad is sitting on death row, convicted of killing his best friend in a gambling dispute turned ugly. And for 5 years, he's maintained his innocence. But Nikki wants no part of that. She's been working on Operation Escape Vegas, playing an illegal card game so she can save up enough money to get out come graduation day. Then her dad's murder conviction is overturned. The new evidence seems to come out of nowhere, and Nikki's life becomes a mess when he's released from prison. Because the dad who came home is not the dad she remembers, and he's desperately obsessed with finding out who framed him and why. As her dad digs into the steady underbelly of Vegas, the past threatens everything, and Nikki is drawn into his deadly hunt for the truth. But in the city of sin, some sinners would do anything to keep their secrets, and Nikki soon finds herself playing for the biggest gamble ever, her life. Dun dun dun.
That's
so that
yeah, it is.
It just, I don't know, it just sounds good. I have 2 copies, two copies, and 3 bookmarks. So like I said, I liked his other book, Fake ID and Endangered, and he's a Black author, and I have been slacking on my blog lately because all the books I've been reading have been written by white people. I love white people, you know that, but I need to mix it up on my blog. So his other book was also a really awesome mystery that, Crystal, you might want to take a look at, and it's February, so we should read a book by Black people. Okay, bye.
Agreed. Motion passed. That sounds cool. I like when we push outside of my regular zone of fantasy and romance. So I dig it.
There might be romance. There was romance last time.
Cool. All right. Any final thoughts on this? I think we've said all that needs to be said. We good?
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us, all of our many viewers, all 0 of them. Signing off.